A significant time in my life has come. I turned 52 years old. In my family circle are two sons. The eldest is 36 years old. He has chosen the profession of dentist. The younger one is still in high school, on the cusp of adulthood. A few years ago, when the youngest was only 5 years old, my career took off. I started earning more money than I ever imagined. My wife and I made a decision. Let's start saving for college for our youngest. After all, we didn't have that opportunity for our oldest at the time. With the beginning of this month, a new phase began for the younger one. He started receiving letters with offers of enrollment. His excitement and joy became visible to everyone. He has not yet made up his mind about his future profession. He hesitates between medicine and law. Receipt of the second enrollment letter last week added to the emotions of the whole family. My wife and I felt it was time to tell our son about the funds we had accumulated for his education. His surprise and the seriousness with which he accepted the news touched us deeply. We emphasized that these funds, although they would not cover all his expenses, would make his education much easier. We advised him to look for a part-time job so that he could contribute to his future. His willingness to accept our offer and his gratitude for what we had done made us even prouder of him. His happy smile was a gift to us. The happiness was multiplied when he shared the news of the additional enrollment letter with his brother. An unexpected call from his oldest son shortly afterward brought excitement. He spoke through tears, which made me wary. He asked if I was alone and if the younger one was around. His excitement was alarming, and I hurried to find out the reason for his concern. My older son, through tears, shared his worries with me. He expressed his weariness that he felt his younger brother was getting everything effortlessly while he had to labor for every accomplishment. These words stunned me. I hastily apologized, explaining that circumstances have changed and we are trying to provide the younger one what we could not give the older one when he was growing up. He questioned our support, asking why we chose to keep him if we were facing financial difficulties. His words that he would have been better off if we had put him up for adoption hurt me deeply. My mother and I always tried to give him all of our love and support, even if we couldn't provide for him financially. Hearing such a wish from my son was unbearably painful. Attempts to apologize and explain only resulted in him cutting the conversation short, leaving me with an aching heart. My subsequent attempts to contact him were unsuccessful, other than a brief message asking him to leave me alone for a while. Sharing this pain, I shared what had happened with my wife. She, in turn, did not hold back her tears either. Although she wanted to talk to him, I convinced her to wait, respecting his desire to leave him alone. The past week without communication with my son was a period of deep sadness for my wife and me. We were used to talking to him every few days. Evenings spent crying became our reality. This great age difference between the children, at 19 years old, inevitably led to different circumstances in their upbringing. We were faced with the daunting challenge of maintaining a balance in our relationship and love for both of our children, despite life's volatile situations. At one time, when the youngest was 5 years old, a college fund was established. At that point, the older son was 24 years old. He was faced with the need for financial support. The question arises, why, when the older one was 24 and you were promoted, did you not want to help him? If you had the opportunity to save enough money, why not help your older son pay off his student loans? Maybe because he wasn't considered the golden child. Attitudes seem to leave a lot to be desired. My wife, being a therapist, often says, if there are tantrums, then there is historical context. The older son probably feels resentment because of the many instances of unfair treatment, whether intentional or not. It is important to realize that the issue is not money, gifts, or anything material in a greedy sense. Rather, it is the feeling that your parents do not see you as an equal, and the lack of financial support is a clear reflection of this fact. I would agree that it was my older son who needed help with his student loans, which he was still paying off because of their high interest rates. If there had been any help back then, the interest on $10,000 would have been much lower than the interest on $20,000. The decision to set aside funds for the younger son 13 years down the road, rather than helping the older son who could have benefited from the same funds at the time, definitely seems unwise. I wish you luck in rectifying this situation, although I doubt it can be done. Next story. I am 23 years old and I am a male. I am currently dating Kelly, a girl who is 25 years old. Kelly has two wonderful moms, Gina, who is 64 years old, and Stacy, who is 71 years old. I enjoy spending time with them, although there is a definite problem with this story. Stacy has a tendency to tell untruths about both small things and serious matters. Kelly has repeatedly mentioned to me her worries about this, indicating that lying causes her stress and emotional pain. Kelly tries to accept these characteristics of her mother's character, seeing them as an unchangeable part of her personality. Last week, when I was helping Stacy with errands and she forgot her wallet, I took it as a random mistake given her age. I decided to pay for a few purchases she needed, on the assumption that she would reimburse me later. However, as I was recounting the day to Kelly, she asked if Stacy had asked me to pay for anything. After my confirmation, Kelly explained that this behavior is typical of Stacy. She often claims a forgotten purse to get others to pay for her purchases, with a promise to repay the debt, which rarely happens in practice. Learning about this was uncomfortable, as I value sincerity in relationships and have not previously experienced lies from Stacy. It is important to note that money is not an issue for Stacy. She has ample funds and no debt, with Gina paying most of the bills. Recently, Stacy asked me to accompany her again to run some errands as she needed help with shopping that was too heavy for her. I agreed to help. Before we left, I suddenly remembered that I had forgotten something important and went back to grab my jacket. I asked her if she had made sure she had taken everything she needed, especially emphasizing the presence of her phone, keys, and wallet. She confidently answered in the affirmative. I suggested she check again before we got off, to which she agreed, confirming several times. Our journey continued, and after running a few errands, we stopped at a pharmacy. Here she asked me to buy a few things for her, confessing that she had forgotten her wallet again. At this point I wondered, for before going out she had claimed to have everything. I asked her about it, to which I received the reply that she was probably mistaken. My further questions as to whether she was lying to me about having a purse or checking for one caused confusion. She firmly rejected my assumptions, implying that I was accusing her of lying. Her question about the reasons for my attitude and accusation of lying reinforced our misunderstanding. She argued that if I did not want to help her, she had better go home. I explained that my resentment was not due to my refusal to help, but to my unwillingness to put up with the lies. Her response to this was very reserved and even cold. After this incident, Kelly told me that she had become withdrawn and, according to her, hadn't left the room since we got home yesterday. I guess I overreacted to the situation. Just because you didn't take her actions for granted doesn't make you wrong. Obviously, for a long time this behavior was commonplace for her and she is not used to being criticized for it. Stacy avoids confrontation because she feels embarrassed and annoyed at the same time. If your goal is to get her to reconsider her habits, you can consider yourself somewhat successful. Stacy may not even realize the nature of her actions when she talks about her forgotten wallet, hinting at asking you to pay for it. Both Gina and Kelly understand this pattern. Either they agree to pay or they don't. It's up to you to decide if you'll follow their lead in the future. While it may be a while before she decides to test you again, your refusal has allowed you to avoid cheating again. Be prepared that your relationship with her may temporarily deteriorate or she may start to keep her distance. In the example of my grandmother, who often resorted to lying, I learned that ignoring her fabrications works just as well as confronting her directly. A simple "no, I don't have the money to buy something for you" said a few times and then walking away from the discussion is often effective. It is also important to take care that your actions do not cause tension with Kelly. Now I want to tell a different story. I turned 30 years old and am getting married this year. Our wedding will be modest in size. We wanted only the nearest and dearest to us to attend. Everyone we have decided to invite already knows the date, and their attendance has been confirmed at no cost. The ceremony is planned for the summer in an informal setting. It was of utmost importance to us to have those who are truly meaningful to us around. We were aiming to organize an inexpensive wedding, which presented some challenges. Among the invitees was my paternal grandmother, whose relationship with my father leaves much to be desired. However, the details of that relationship are inappropriate here. When my brother and I were only 4 years old, we lost our mom. Her twin sister, our aunt, became an indispensable support for my father after that loss. We lived with her for about 7 or 8 months, giving Dad time to recover. Our aunt was with us on the first day of school, feeding, clothing, and protecting us the entire time we were with her. Even after our father took us in again, she continued to be the one who took care of us after school and on weekends when our father was busy at work. Our aunt played a huge role in our lives. She and Mom were orphans, so we only had her on our mother's side. The family on my father's side had little involvement in our upbringing, leaving those important moments to my aunt's care. After my father got engaged, our lives changed dramatically. My father's new wife did not want our aunt to continue to be present in our lives. She sought to take our mother's place, believing that our aunt's presence prevented her from doing so. As a result, my father, along with his future spouse, moved us to another state. We moved frequently, which deprived our aunt of the opportunity to visit us. Since then, we have not been able to see or communicate with her. My aunt would try to find us, but after each of her attempts, we moved again. We missed her madly. For the next 10 years, Dad tried to erase all memories of Auntie and Mom from our minds, striving to create a perfect family with just the four of us. However, we could not forgive him for this and disliked him and his wife. As teenagers, we found an aunt on our own. At the age of 18, we left my father's house and cut off all communication with them. My grandmother was always aware of these events. As children, she tried to support us and persuade us to meet my aunt. When my father found out about my wedding plans through a third person not invited to the ceremony, he turned to my grandmother, told her how much he and his wife wanted to come to the wedding and how sad they were at the realization of completely losing touch with us. Grandma suggested inviting them, or at least my father, since he was still my father after all. I refused to make any compromises. My grandmother considered my actions too drastic and compared them to my father's, emphasizing that such behavior could be harmful in the long run. I felt at an impasse. You're not doing anything wrong, I'm sorry to say, but Grandma seems unable to realize that she never experienced the loss of a close, devoted, and loving person in her childhood. The kind of loss where the most important part of the family, the only connection to her mom who left, was taken away because of the jealousy of her father and his new wife. Grandma doesn't know what it means to have strangers imposed on you as family, ignoring your real connections and memories. Her disappointment over her father not being invited to the wedding is nothing compared to the pain it caused. That her father and his wife are sad about not being invited to the wedding seems ironic considering all they have done. It's hard to believe how far they were willing to go just to keep my aunt at a distance from us. I've been through a few moves myself for various reasons. It's hard, especially for a child who has to adjust to a new school, make friends, and get used to a new culture. In fact, your parents' behavior resembles that of people trying to escape justice by moving from place to place at the slightest risk of being discovered. Furthermore, I have suspicions that your grandmother may have contributed to keeping your location a secret. My advice is to let it all go and live your life to the fullest. However, it's worth being prepared for them to try to re-enter your life, especially if you have children. My next story. In our family, I, a 37-year-old man, live with my wife Jen, also 37, and our two teenage daughters. Recently, this past weekend, Jen spent the day away from home in the company of our oldest daughter, who for the purposes of this story we will call Emily, while I stayed home with the youngest. About 3 hours after they left, I received a call from a deeply distraught Emily. Tears overpowered her voice as she told me that she and her mom had gone to a clothing store and decided to split up to browse the different departments. Suddenly, Jen was gone, her phone set to voicemail mode. Emily asked the store employees to make an announcement, but no one responded. My wife had been missing for about an hour. I rushed to reassure Emily, telling her that I would head over there right away. When I arrived, I found that Jen was still gone and her car was missing from the parking lot. We began our search, driving around the nearby stores in hopes of finding her there. I tried to contact her by phone. About 40 minutes after I arrived, Jen called, saying she was returning to the clothing store. When I asked her where she had been, she replied that she had decided to go to another store nearby. I inquired as to why she hadn't taken Emily with her or at least warned her. Jen explained that she didn't think the absence would take long. Emily was shocked by what had happened and avoided socializing with Jen. Our return home was accompanied by an argument between my wife and me. I expressed my opinion that Jen had acted irresponsibly by leaving Emily alone. In response, Jen claimed that I was treating Emily like a child, even though she was old enough to be in the store on her own. When I asked why she hadn't answered the phone, Jen explained that she had accidentally activated the Do Not Disturb mode. She resented me for calling her irresponsible, insisting that her actions were not a manifestation of irresponsible parenting. While I recognize that I can be overprotective at times, the pressing issue of safety in our high-crime neighborhood makes me particularly sensitive to these situations. You really aren't an idiot. There are doubts arising as to your wife's actual intentions. It's hard to imagine that someone could leave a store, go to another store, and not notify an attendant, especially when a child is involved. It's odd that a message was not sent with a simple notification. I'm going to be away. I'll be back in a while. Would you prefer to wait here or come with me? Obviously, leaving a child alone in a store for 2 hours while going to another store is something unheard of. It's even more amazing to put the phone on Do Not Disturb mode, especially when there's the possibility of an important call. There is speculation that there may be other reasons for its absence, perhaps related to personal appointments that have nothing to do with shopping. You're not being thoughtless, but the situation needs careful consideration. A story that really surprised me. I am 27 years old and have an older sister, Kara, who is 45. Despite the noticeable age difference, we remain very close. Kara is not just a sister to me, she is like a second mom. Our bond became even stronger after we lost my mom when I was 14 years old. Since then, Kara has taken on the role of my guardian, caring for me with motherly love. In the past, I had asked her to give me more freedom, as I was always looking for career advancement and preferred not to get into long-term relationships. Most of my friends have already started families, while I only recently got out of a serious relationship with my ex-fiancé Ted. Our breakup happened a year ago, and I've been trying to move on ever since, although I do miss Ted. Kara has been my rock during the breakup, but she is still hoping for us to reconcile with Ted because she really likes him. She even offered to let me quit my job to rekindle our relationship. Unlike Kara, who has found happiness in the life of a housewife with 3 children and another child in her care, my life is different. Her spouse is not actively involved in the home life, causing me to reject her. I have been suggesting to Kara that she and her husband discuss his greater involvement in the home. Last night, Kara brought up the topic of my personal happiness again, suggesting that we set me up on a blind date. This seems to have become a staple of our conversations in recent weeks. She's sure she only wants happiness for me, but when I expressed that her lifestyle is a nightmare for me, it upset her. Your statement that your sister's life is a nightmare for you is astonishing given the circumstances. Your sister took on the role of caregiver after your mother left, which is not easy. Her care and support in your life has probably had a big impact on you. It's important to appreciate her efforts, even if your outlook on life differs. You express resentment at the way your sister tries to interfere in your personal life, especially when it comes to reconnecting with an ex and arranging blind dates. These actions may seem burdensome, but it may be worth considering her motives. Maybe she genuinely wants your happiness based on her ideas about it. Suggesting that you openly discuss your concerns about your son-in-law and change your relationship sounds reasonable. If you want her to treat you like a sister rather than a child, start the dialogue from that position. Understanding and mutual respect can change the dynamics of your relationship for the better. Deviating from your sister's wishes for your personal happiness and career is your right. Interfering with your personal life, including insisting on reuniting with an ex or setting up blind dates without your consent, may seem like a violation of personal boundaries. It's important to discuss these things to find a mutually agreeable solution. Both of you are adults who are entitled to your own opinions and life path. It may be time for each of you to go about your own business while maintaining a warm and supportive relationship with each other.